I'm Betty Swan. Welcome to our show, Wisdom in the Night, where you get help for the tough decisions in your life. Tonight I have a great guest. He is the retired founding partner of Computer Enterprises, Inc. and CEO of Barry Zungre, LLC. So hello, Barry Zungre.
Hello, Betty.
So did you start out the head of this, the founder of this, or how did you start out? Give me your background.
Yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh, in a place called North Braddock, and I grew up never remembering my father because when I was 3, my sister was 5. Our parents divorced, so we lived with my mom. And, she kind of struggled. She didn't have skills, so she struggled through, maintaining employment. And kind of my earliest recollection back in Pittsburgh was being in a line. And I was too young to know what food stamps were, but I remember being in the line and seeing that other people were looking at us strangely. So that was kind of a stigma that I grew up with. And then later on, fortunately, we moved in with my grandmother, and my grandmother had a 2-bedroom home in a nice neighborhood suburb of Pittsburgh called Green Oak Heights, and we had my extended family all lived there. So it was my uncle, my mom, my sister, me.
All in the same house?
All in the same house, yeah. 2-bedroom little ranch house in the suburb of Pittsburgh. And so it got to the point where I was old enough, junior high, high school. I was in elementary school when we moved there, but junior high, I kind of survived it. I lived in the same room with my uncle, so I wanted more privacy, so my bedroom became the basement. So I had privacy down there. But you know what, as far as my background, I went to college, thanks to Johnson, the Great Society. I think it cost me $900 to go to college. I'm really grateful for that.
Was that because of your income level?
Yeah. So I went basically for free.
Where'd you go to school?
Duquesne University in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yep. So went to college, and I didn't know anything about what I should prepare for. So I went to college for accounting, and I was just starting after I graduated to prepare for my CPA exam, and I thought, and I actually had a job where I was an office manager. It did not work out. My first job, I don't know if anybody else is like that, but my first job did not work out.
How'd that make you feel when it didn't work out? Did you feel like a failure? Or did you just think...
I felt like I really learned from it. I felt like I have responsibility to my employer. And the responsibility is to carry out their objectives. And so I can't allow a situation where I'm controlled. I have to manage properly. Of course, you have great relationships with the people that work for you and work with you, but you still have to get the job done for your employer. So I learned that, and so fortunately that never happened again.
Yeah, but Barry, even there's people watching this show in the middle of the night. They're young. They've got their first job. Maybe they're going through the very same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And here you are saying, this is what I learned. And if they're smart and they're listening, they're going to perk up and go, is that what I need to do? Oh, yeah.
And also, I would get advice from people, especially for your first job. Because, you hear the stories. The first job didn't go well, lost my job. Then I learned what it really was to meet the expectations of my employer. Talk to people who are in the workforce. Talk to parents. Talk to talk to people who have already had experience in the workforce.
Now, how do you
find
find those people?
Oftentimes it's your peers. Oftentimes it's your parents or a parent. Oftentimes it's extended family members, people that you respect. But definitely gather together. I'll tell you, if I've learned anything, is never abdicate decisions in your life, but have a group of advisors. I have a group of advisors that I use I use regularly. You know, I'm 62 years old, and I don't make an important decision in my life without first getting counsel from my advisors. And I'll have advisors that specialize in kind of business decisions, pressing family decisions, retirement decisions, you know, and then I'll seek out professionals. You know, they'll be my advisors. Maybe you need to seek counsel from a lawyer or an accountant, whatever it is, where oftentimes the decision is made. When you hear the advice from the advisor, then you make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel so strong about that. I started a company. My new company is Zungre LLC, and that's what I am. I'm an advisor. I'm a consultant. I'm a coach.
So based on what you've learned through all these other experiences, you started the new company.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, was your father involved in any of this?
No, the remembrance I have of my father were all pretty negatives. It was the shouting matches, because you have alimony, you have, all the payments you have to make to keep the spouse afloat and the children afloat, child payments. He never made them. And so there was court hearings, there was court battles to get him to pay. They attached his wages for a time. It was, we kind of went through the whole thing. So my recollections of my father were all negative. And then what happens is he had visitation rights, but he lived in California, he moved around. I lived in Pittsburgh, he moved around based on the jobs that he would get. Mm-hmm. And so when he did end up in Pittsburgh, I'd have to go visit him. And it would always be like around the holidays. And so my sister, she was so cooperative. She'd go. She was my older sister. She'd take me by the hand. She was more like my mom even than my mom was, and she'd try to get me to behave. But I'd go on Christmas Day to visit my father, and I'm not proud of this, but I tortured him. I did not want to be there. I saw him one time a year, and you're going to take me away from my real family on Christmas. So that was my recollections, which unfortunately were not, but not very positive. But later on in life, my father actually came to Christ and reconciled with me. I was a missionary. My wife and I, Terry, who's in the studio, my wonderful wife of 38 years, he reconciled, came to Christ, reconciled with me, and actually helped support us financially while we were missionaries.
Amazing.
In the end of his life.
Amazing.
Married a great woman. So yeah. So
wow, anything can be changed.
Anything can be changed.
That
really
is
true.
exciting. So now you got out of your first job, and how did you get in your first business?
Well, my next job after I lost my first job was selling for a large account manufacturing company that sold mainframe computers, Burroughs Corporation. Probably your listeners, you may have heard of them, but I think they were bought out by Unisys, Compaq. Was part of that whole conglomeration of companies. And I sold big mainframe computers to large manufacturing companies. And I really fell in love with sales. I was training to be like a CPA, pass my CPA exam. I abandoned that and, went full in sales. I found something that I loved.
That's the big thing, isn't it? Where people say, find something you love, and then it doesn't even feel like work because you enjoy it so much.
Exactly. Well, that leads me to your question, how I started my first business. Well, I was ultimately, I sold hardware, computer hardware for a long time, and then I transitioned into services because I saw that the kind of bottom was falling out. It became more of a commoditized sell. I wanted to sell services. So I went to work for a company called Computer Specialist in Pittsburgh. And actually, I worked with my sister. She was the accountant, and I was the sales rep, and then I became a sales manager there. And so while I was there, I learned the business of software consulting. And I thought, I did really well. I think I made the owner a millionaire many times over. And I saw how to do the business. I mean, I didn't know the entire workings of the business, but I knew the important part, which is client relationships, client acquisition, and decided that I wanted to start my own company. And so I had sold software consultants, where consultants who go out and program for a business. They work for you, but they program for others. That was my company that was the company that I worked for somebody else. I met my partner. His name is Dakshinamurti Raja, and he was a manager for a Lockheed company in Pittsburgh. And he was just very personable, just a great guy. And we hit it off, right away, and I sold software consultants to him. So I heard that he went off and started his own company. So over lunch, I said, let's go have a pizza. I have a proposition for you. So we met, and I asked him to change his company, join with me, and would launch he'd be the recruiter, I'd be the salesperson, would launch a company, and that was the birthplace of Computer Enterprise Inc. Actually, we were so cheap, we didn't want to pay to launch a new company, so we changed the name of the company he had, Leather Enterprises, to Computer Enterprises Incorporated. Yeah, so
wow.
That was the beginning.
And how long were you with him?
We actually were in business from 1994 until probably about 7 years I sold. And I still consult to them, but I sold. And through that time, we became an Inc. company for fastest growing privately held companies with a 4,000% growth rate. 3 years in a row we were that.
Good night.
So we won all the local awards for fast growing companies.
You were in Pittsburgh?
Yep, we were in Pittsburgh, and we had offices around the country. We still do. Well, they still do, I should say. I consult there now. I'm not an owner. I sold to my partner. But when I left, we were about $42 million in annual revenue, very profitable, and now I think they're about $48 million at the end of this year.
Still going then.
They're still going, still prospering, still doing very well.
Now, you said something about being a missionary?
Oh,
what
yeah.
was that?
Right when I had this job with Burroughs where I was selling mainframes, I'm the hot guy selling mainframe computers, meeting with Fortune 1000 companies in Pittsburgh, very, very great job. And I became a missionary because, I actually came to Christ.
Now, maybe you should tell how that happened.
All right, sure. Yeah, no, I'd be happy. My background, I didn't have a very, kind of an auspicious beginning in religion. My first recollection of religion was my family was Catholics but never went to church, so we never darkened the door of a church. But I remember one weekend they decided they would take me, so we went to the local church in Pittsburgh. And I remember they sent me off. They went to the church. They sent me off to the children. So, and they gave me money, and they said, "You got to give this money." And I'm a young kid. I was probably 6, 7 years old. I don't remember. But they gave me this. I remember they passed around this to me, which seemed to be this immense plastic church, and they told me to put my money inside the church. And I said, I'm not giving you my money. And no matter what they did, I'm very proud to say I did not give my money to the church. So that's my experience with religion. But what happened? I went to a reunion, like a class reunion. I don't know, the 20th or whatever it is. And I had a friend there, and I didn't recall this story. He told me. He said back in 1974, we were on our way to see a movie downtown Pittsburgh at the Warner Theater. We were going to see The Exorcist. Oh my! And I was drunk. I'm not proud to say I was drunk. And I threw as we were driving through the tunnels to get into Pittsburgh, I flipped the bird at a cop. So he was really worried we would get arrested. Fortunately, we didn't. We made it to The Exorcist. And while I was watching The Exorcist, I was terrified. I knew that this was true. I knew there was something out there besides me. And I was very much afraid because I knew that I was not in a place that was a good place with God. So 2 weeks after that, I accepted Christ. But here's how it happened. Every night I would go, me and my friends would go to this athletic field, would play sports. Unfortunately, we'd get high. And after that, me and my friend, Jimmy Turner, went to a cheerleader's house. So we didn't know they'd be there. We knocked on the door. Fortunately, she was there. She invited us in. We thought, oh, this is great. And lo and behold, somebody that was kind of my enemy in high school was there. Janet Kern, now it's Janet Harbury. They're lifelong friends. And she didn't like me in high school. And she was very negative, like not very ambitious. I didn't like her very much either. But she was very optimistic. Then she started talking about Jesus, and she started talking about how you could know him, and I know him, and somehow I knew that was true. And I was high, right? And I made an observation about myself. I was not high anymore. Okay, I was sober as could be, and I was excited. I don't know where this came from. I was just very excited about what she was saying. I was kind of, connected to every word that she would say, Betty. And then she put down a Bible. She told me she read the Bible. I thought, read the Bible? No, Jesus, what's this all about? And I read just a couple sentences, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember it addressed a question that I had and was talking about that very week. And I thought, something strange is happening. So she gave me this little booklet, it had comics on it, and stuff like that. So I went home to my basement, I'm in the basement, me and this little booklet.
Chick book. I bet it was
Chick track
yeah,
is really
chick
what
track.
it was. So I started reading this, and it talked about Jesus and how he loved me, and he gave his sin for me, but this person...
not gave his sin, took your sin.
Took my sin, and you're talking about Jesus. And I'm reading this, and it talked about how he loved me, and I started crying knowing that he loved me. And then it started talking about how we were sinners and how this chick track character was a sinner. And I related to that, and I was terrified that I was a sinner. And then in this book, I think the character died and somehow went to hell or something, and I was terrified. And
because you just seen The Exorcist.
Yeah, I just saw The Exorcist, and I'm thinking about all this, and it's going through my mind. And then it talked about, but no, there's still hope for you. If you pray this prayer and accept Jesus and what Jesus did for you on the cross, ask him to forgive your sins. He'll forgive your sin, cleanse you, and come into your life, and you will get to know Jesus. And I said yes. It was like, to me, it was like, there was no question I was going to do this. I prayed the prayer. Instantly, I started crying. I felt cleansed. I knew that it was something supernatural. It was like Jesus came into my life, and I was instantly changed, radically changed.
Just like your friend had been instantly changed, this Janet gal,
Exactly.
from negative to positive.
And then I spent kind of like the next, I met my wife at my youth group. She took me to the youth group, which auspiciously was named Power Group. It sounds like a leftist political movement, but it was a great place. And I met Terry there. And a couple years later we were married. And Janet was there, and they kind of all helped us all, and Janet included. She met the same girl that led me to the Lord. Also, she met at college and led her into a closer relationship with the Lord. I don't know if this is the proper place to say it, the baptism of the Holy Spirit, where she got more power, to share the love of Jesus, to pray, to witness, and so Janet had a great effect on me and Terry's life.
Yeah, amazing. And so from that experience in beginning to walk with the Lord in the real way, Jesus. And I know what you're talking about because it happened to me too in the 70s. It's amazing that your life can change just because of some words in a book or words in somebody's mouth, and you believe it and you pray the prayer.
Yes.
Everything changes.
Everything changes.
It's amazing. So you're now working with your friend that in business.
Yep,
and how'd you become a missionary? Okay, how'd you become a missionary?
How to become a missionary. So I was selling these mainframe computers for Burroughs, and our youth group, Power Group, there was about 30 to 40 people who went there. We recorded 29 people actually became missionaries or pastors.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a real move of God that was affecting this youth group. So we were kind of in line, my wife and I, and actually Terry, before we were married, really felt God calling her to be a missionary, and I felt like I should be a missionary. And we had missionary speakers would come in, we were greatly influenced. And she went up to pray about whether or not she should go there because she was worried that I wouldn't leave. And I think it was a legitimate concern. And I prayed about whether I should leave to go become a missionary at that point. She prayed about whether or not, I know I'm going to get this story wrong, but the way it ended up, she felt like God says, no, it's okay to marry him and stay with him in Pittsburgh. Eventually you'll become missionaries, even though she was warned.
Maybe, watch out for this guy.
Watch out for this guy. And I did stay. I kind of felt in prayer that I ought to stay. And I did, and I'm glad I stayed 2 years because that helped me in the future to get, after we were done with being missionaries, get a new job. So anyway, long story short, eventually after we were married, worked at this job another year or so, we went off and we went to Youth with a Mission in Concord, New Hampshire. And we worked in cities, and we did itinerant evangelism, where we would do street evangelism, talking to people about our faith in Christ, and saw many, many people come to Jesus just through conversations, kind of unique times where, you're not planning to meet them, they're not planning to meet you, but it was like a, kind of a God event, and they would come to Jesus. Then we went overseas to do urban missionary work with Youth with a Mission in Amsterdam, Holland. And while we were there, we worked with a Chinese pastor from Hong Kong who came into the country. And what we would do is we worked with his church, all Chinese. So here we are in Amsterdam, but we're working with Chinese. And we would go into the prisons, people who smuggled drugs into the country. And actually, a lot of them would be extradited back to their countries, and they would be killed. So it was very serious encounters with these people because they knew their lives were on the line. And then we would go and work with restaurant workers who basically would come on a tourist visa. Their tourist visa would finish. They'd stay in the country and they'd work at in Amsterdam Chinese restaurants.
Yeah,
and we'd share Jesus with them, and had a Chinese Bible study in my neighborhood.
Well, I bet you never thought you were called to the Chinese, but it was going to be in Amsterdam.
Yeah, it was really a crazy thing. One time, Terry and I were praying about, what should we do? What's our next step? We went to this missionary training school. And in the missionary training school, we prayed, and there's only supposed to be one Bible verse that's in Isaiah that's supposed to be somehow a Bible verse that's connected with the Chinese people. And as we were praying, we were led to that Bible verse. But I don't
Well, let me ask you something. As you're going along in life, so you were doing the mainframe, then you got your own business and your partner. I know you had to have had challenges. Even though this company grew by 4,000% 2 years in a row, what were the challenges? And maybe even how to being a missionary, taking that time out of your life to go do something for God, how did all of that, what challenges did you encounter, and how did all that work in? And
the challenges that we had, like starting a business or being involved in sales, period. So I'm sure there's lots of salespeople out there. You're facing failure every day, 80%, 90% failure. No, I don't want to talk to you. No, I'm not interested. No, I buy the safe product and yours is not. That's how it was with business. It was way more failures than success.
Really?
Oh yeah, far more failures. And it was kind of, you put the small group of successes together, and ultimately you gain momentum, so that ultimately it's a strange thing. It's harder then to fail than to succeed. In the beginning, it's way harder to fail than succeed. Success is rare. But later on, as the successes mount, you gain momentum, and it's harder to fail. It's a really strange thing.
Okay,
that
so
way.
let me make sure I understand that. In the beginning, it's harder to succeed and easier to fail.
It's almost impossible to succeed, actually.
In the beginning.
That's exactly
right. And so
right.
what do you have to have in your inner character to go on when you're failing so much?
Yeah, being able to take rejection well, not personalizing, not internalizing.
How'd you learn how to do that? Everybody watching has that.
Well, I could take a day. I've just always been able to do this because I kind of, in my background, I've kind of always had a chip on my shoulder wanting to prove myself. So, and I think that really was God's plan to help me with what my future would look like. And so I decided that, nothing was going to, make me fail. I kind of had this internal persistence and determination that I was gonna go on. But the thing that would help me even to this day, when I have a really bad day, I go home and go to sleep. And
so
the next morning I'm fine.
Yes, because you have time to regenerate while you're asleep.
Every day is a new day, So and most days are a failure. And I guess the other thing is when you feel like really, hey, I've had enough. Some of my greatest successes, some of my greatest clients that I was able to, establish and acquire, happened when I did not want to make another call. I did not want to have another appointment. I did not want to make another presentation. But I said, no, I really owe this to myself and to my family and to my God. And I know that sounds cheesy, but
No, it
I
doesn't
really
sound cheesy
thought
at all.
that.
It's real.
I really thought that, and I made the call, and bam!
Right
I'm
after
opening
that?
up Westinghouse and PPG and Alcoa and Johnson & Johnson and all these companies. It happened, strangely enough, had a bad day, terrible day. Then I said, okay, let me give this 15 more minutes. Made the call, set up an appointment with J&J, went in, met a manager, and it became, a multi-million-dollar account. So.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was most people quit when success is right around the corner. And that's
Yeah.
what you're saying, right?
I think so. That's a good way to say it.
Because
to
one more
remember
time,
that.
one more time, and you made the
One
phone
more
call
time.
and got the big deal.
And got the big deal, and that made all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, have you had any other big challenges as you've gone through life?
I actually have had had a big challenge that happened, and it really did affect me. I lived in New York, during 9/11. So I'm trying to reach my wife. She called. I was in a business meeting. I was kind of annoyed. Hey, a plane just wrecked into one of the twin towers. I said that's probably nothing. Probably a plane that got off track, little plane, maybe a Cessna. So then I couldn't reach her for the next 4 hours, and turns out 9/11 happened. That greatly affected me. I have no idea why. It affected me so that my morale was affected, my disposition changed, and I became kind of morose and thought, here I am, I have a business that's successful, but I'm not happy. I feel like I'm not doing anything that's significant or important. And eventually it resulted in me challenging my partner that I wanted to sell the company to him, and he didn't want to sell the company. And we had a breakdown in our relationship that resulted in us almost walking out the door and parting the company. We had a policy, we had a clause in our agreement that we could split the company. And then I kind of came to my senses and realized, because I was the fault of this. It was all my fault that this was happening.
Well, let me just stop with that. That is very interesting, and I hope you've been paying attention. Think about this whole story he's told us is, I almost wanted to quit. I really wanted to quit. There were things making me want to quit, even 9/11. And yet you've heard this man say, I sold it, I made a lot of money selling it, I have another company doing great with it. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight, and I hope you think about what Barry has said. It's not an accident that you turned on the TV tonight. I'm sure you got some great wisdom from this man, and I hope you take it and use it in your life. And I hope you think about it tonight, whether you're going to sleep or you're going to work. I'll see you next time with more great wisdom. Bye.